Welcome to This Sacred Life in the Divine Feminine Spotlight. I'm Shan Vanderleek, founder of transformationgoddess.com and producer of the Goddess Talk Sessions. Every month I share transformational conversations with women who walk in beauty with the strength, courage, and pleasure of reclaiming their feminine sovereignty. Women all over the world are rising up to have their voices heard and to be treated with respect. I like to give each of their voices a platform so that they can speak their truth and inspire other listeners to do the same. Today, it's my honor to introduce you to Danielle Dulsky, who, amongst many things, is a midwife for helping us dig deep to access our holy wildness. She reminds us that we were all wild once. I first introduced you to Danielle during the Goddess Talk Sessions, and again when she published her first book, Woman Most Wild. Danielle is the author of The Holy Wild and Woman Most Wild. She is an artist, yoga teacher, energy worker, and founder of Living Mandala Yoga teacher training programs. She leads women's circles, witchcraft workshops, and energy healing trainings, and lives in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Today, we'll be discussing her new book, The Holy Wild, a heathen Bible for the untamed woman. Holy Wild is the Bible for the modern witch, female, male, or beyond the gender binary, who wants to deepen their spiritual power and embody magic at a new level. It is the book that can open up a previously timid or nervous person who is afraid, yet excited about their energetic power. It's a guidebook for anyone who wants to look at their lives in a new way and reclaim the passionate vibrancy that our patriarchal culture may have stifled or tried to snuff out. It really is a potent and powerful read. Welcome to This Sacred Life, Danielle.
Hi, Shan. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure to connect with you. It's been so cool watching this all unfold for you, all of this writing and teaching and beauty, and wow, you're just right in the vortex of so much goodness.
I am just in time for the season of the witch too.
Right? I know it. So your book is called The Holy Wild, a heathen Bible for the untamed woman. How did you come up with this awesome title?
Yeah, it was a process. I think I had the Holy Wild in my head for a long time. So writing about this idea of, nature as being holy and those kind of suppressed parts of the feminine that we tend to call wild in a more derogatory way, like they're out of control or immature or whatever, and reclaiming those as holy. So that first part, the Holy Wild, I've had that kind of on the back burner of my brain for years.
Yeah.
But the heathen Bible for the untamed woman, that was, coming together in pieces. I think at first it was Bible for the untamed priestess, and then that didn't seem quite right. And then it was, we needed an adjective for Bible, and what was the perfect adjective for Bible? And then there were all of these ideas being tossed around, between me and my publisher, and none of them seemed quite right. And then I was like, oh, heathen, that's the right word. And there was a little bit of trepidation among the people that had to, market it. Well, I think people are scared of that word. But yeah, in the end, we won. And
yeah, well, that's fantastic. There are people afraid of that word just as much as they are hearing about an untamed woman. I mean, watch yourself.
True. Yeah, and or the word witch, and it's right. Like, where does that fear come from? And in the end, the people that have that kind of visceral gut fear to the word heathen, they don't even really understand what the word means. And if they dig down deep enough, it's like, oh, that word's not scary at all.
Yes, and it's the digging deep that you do such a fine job helping people with. To be able to take that curiosity and say, okay, this is intriguing. I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think it's all about. Digging deep into the psyche to find out, what fears are useful and
Yes,
what beliefs are really yours and which ones need to go. So,
without
yeah.
question. So let's talk a bit about who you wrote this book for.
Mm. I wrote this book for anyone that is looking to know their own story as important, as valuable, for anyone who maybe feels they haven't been served in the way they wanted to be by the books that are called sacred, and in a way that's still very respectful, I think, of the sacred text, but that are looking to know their own story is just as holy as anyone that might have been written in any text that's called sacred. So it's this, reclaiming of the divine, the feminine wild divine through story, and revisioning these feminine archetypes that might have been framed as kind of shameful or maybe even sinful within the context of patriarchal religion, like Lilith, like Jezebel, like Mary Magdalene, revisioning those feminine archetypes as actually embodying the jewels, the gems, the gold of every woman's story.
Oh,
So
without question. And
yeah.
such a healthy reclamation when you think about how many, including me, have carried around so much shame and around choices, around our past historical scenarios, both in our lives and others, all of it that we lug around. And then when you finally have this understanding, it's so freeing. It lifts you up in a way. It lightens things up in a way that, boy, I was surprised.
Yeah.
And I'm still working at it for sure, but it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's so deep in there, particularly among women who were raised in very religious households, where questions weren't permitted, right?
Right.
That's what I think the real wound comes from, is that asking these questions and the questions being like deemed sinful somehow. It's like,
Right.
I'm just asking. I just really want to know why she was so bad, or or how do we know that,
Right.
and yeah, how damaging that can be.
As a teenager, I became at the time they called it catechism. I became a catechism dropout because I asked too many questions, and I wasn't getting any answers.
Right.
At that point, and I was just irreverent enough at that time as well to be like, well, this doesn't work for me,
Right.
and so I just skipped, and
Yeah.
I was just, I don't even know. I think back about it now, Danielle, and I don't even know if my mother even knew that I skipped. I mean, I still went through with my confirmation. I know I have a confirmation name, but that was like the end of it for me, because it just didn't ring true even at that young time in my life, and now it makes so much more sense.
Yeah. I have a lot of those stories. Similar stories, being raised pretty strict born again Christian and going to a born again Christian elementary school, and then for a few years church twice a week. So it was really like this huge part of my socialization was this religion where pretty much most aspects of the feminine experience were viewed as sinful.
Yes, right.
And having this kind, not having any words for it, not calling it wild feminine or anything like I would call it now, but having this knowing during childhood of like, this something is not right. This is not right. Where is my story in this? How am I anything but a servant in this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So powerful. Well, and your storytelling now and your poetry writing and the way that you're showing up really gives so many of us a chance to look behind the curtain and see
Mm-hmm.
what we might be able to find in a very safe way, in a very supportive way.
Yeah, thank you. That's always what I'm trying to do, what I'm hoping to do through my writing.
Let's dig deeper into the words wild and untamed.
Mm.
It's hard for me to say either word without a big smile on my face.
Me too. Yeah, sometimes I'll go back and I'll look at an article that I've written or something, and I'll count the number of times that I said wild, and I'll have this like, oh, maybe that's too much. No. Let's leave it. Yeah, so to me, wild is the most authentic parts of our psyche. Our wildness are those buried parts of our psyche that during childhood we usually decide that they're bad because they might get us socially rejected. They aren't those parts, particularly as women, that are necessarily accepted by the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are our right to feel, our emotional integrity, our bodily autonomy, our intuition, our magical agency. All of those things are of the goddess, and they are the reason why the witch is so feared, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then almost more than all of that, they are kind of primal and very much in nature. If we just look to, and this is one of the messages from the book, I think, that if we just look to nature for our lessons, we would learn so much more.
Oh my gosh, no
than
doubt
we
about
do.
it. No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. I have to tell you a little story about an experience I just had yesterday with my neighbor. Uh,
Mm.
uh, she has chickens. The chickens were out, and there was a hawk circling, and so she called to ask me to come help gather them up,
Mm.
make sure they were safe. Anyway, this gorgeous hawk was up in a walnut tree, and her uh, camouflage was just so stunning. One of those moments where when you do finally see her, you just can't believe you can see her because it's so good and so amazing. And
Yeah.
she just let us watch her, and she'd turn and look at us and look over. And there was this sense that she wanted us to know that it really wasn't about the chickens.
Mm.
She had her eye on something else.
Yeah.
And she stayed and we stayed. And she stayed and we stayed. And the next we knew, she made her move and dropped to the forest floor and snatched the rabbit that she'd been watching and flew away
Okay.
and flew
Yeah.
away. Wow. And I've been having all kinds of hawk medicine in the last week or two, just kind of crazy, cool
Mm-hmm.
things happening. But that happened, and it was just, you want to talk about feeling like a part of everything, just being
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, and that power, and that there was absolutely communication going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a tangent, but when those things happen is when I feel quite wild and quite a part of everything on this earth, without being separated as a woman or as a mother or as a wife, or just part of that wildness.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's absolutely everything, being able to just stop and pay attention and not dismiss the fact that there's this amazing event going on in your backyard or
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
Um, and I think that a lot of women, somewhere between, ages 18 and 25, or somewhere in that just real, like, deep maiden time, there's this message from nature, and sometimes it comes from an experience like you just described, or sometimes it's looking at the moon alone, or something like that. But there's some kind of this cosmic nod from nature that's saying, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
And in talking with a lot of women, everybody kind of has that, like, this moment of feeling like they do belong to something greater, and that it didn't come from a Bible verse or something like that. It came from seeing the hawk in the backyard, or
Yes.
right? And how much more meaningful that is. That felt kind of visceral, embodied experience of belonging to the wild is just absolutely everything.
I give thanks every day that I live so close to so much water and wildlife. So, so many
Yeah.
forests and trees and all the places. So just, okay, I'm done with technology. I have to go get my feet on the ground.
Yes.
I can just walk out and do it,
Right.
which is a bonus. But it still can be done for people who don't live in a remote rural area like I do. You can
Hmm.
find those magical places because they are everywhere.
They are everywhere. Yes, absolutely.
Can you give us an overview of the 5 elements and how you made use of them in your book?
Hmm. Yeah. So it started with, so the whole book is kind of broken into 5 different books. So there's the book of earth, the book of water, the book of fire, the book of air, the book of ether. And that's the order. And so earth is kind of like our ground, right? And so
Mhm.
within each of these 5 books, there are 3 different chapters that are verses, ritual, and magic. So the earth verses are kind of like, poetry, and also opportunities for writing your own stories of stability, finding your own wild home, and revisioning the Lilith archetype. And then the ritual chapter is kind of like spells and spellcraft, and also ritual ceremonies that you can do to better connect with that element. And then finally the magic is path working experiences, guided meditations, incantations for that element. So earth is our ground, water is our sensuality and our emotional integrity. So in the book of water, I work with the Salome archetype, this idea of this sensual maiden reclaiming her power. And then fire, I work with the mother of Babylon archetype. And it's this idea of righteous rage and ferocity kind of being at the heart of our will,
Yeah.
and also our ability to handcraft our lives. So our magical agency is really seated right there at the solar plexus. So the fire element, the book of fire is all about that idea of knowing rage is not necessarily anything to be diluted or discounted or even healed, really, but instead to be utilized in order to affect change in the world. And then the book of air is, I work with Mary Magdalene, and it's this idea of global community and connecting with others, creating circles, love,
Yeah.
partnership, relationship. And then finally, ether, I work with Jezebel, revisioning Jezebel's story, and it's kind of the hag archetype, or the crone, and it's such a potent time for working with the hag right now
Oh,
during
yeah.
autumn. So intuition, the void between birth and death, ghosts, spirits, spirit guides, all of that is in the book of ether. So it's kind of this really broad overview of how the different elements might manifest in the feminine psyche, but then also in the wild, and also revisioning these different archetypes of shamed women, as fully embodying whatever that element is.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
You proudly call yourself a witch,
I do.
and really not a lot of women do.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to know what standing proudly in your truth as a witch, explain what that means to you.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it means different things to me at different times in my life.
I bet.
And I always wonder, in like this time right now of my sacred work being so kind of visible, I always ask myself, what does it mean right now to be a witch, when for much of my life, I knew it as a solitary practice, as
Right.
being not necessarily invisible, but something that was very much done behind closed doors. And, my spell work being done in the playroom with the curtains drawn while my children were taking a nap.
Right.
and that kind of thing was very, and during childhood, it was hiding all of those magical tools under my bed because those were, sinful, and I was going to get punished for those. So this kind of coming out and being very vocal about my witchcraft for about the past 13 years or so. What does that mean for me now? It's kind of reconciling my solitary practice with being a teacher, and I don't know, like, my level of comfort with that changes.
Yeah, I bet. Yes.
Sometimes I do want to kind of run screaming back into the broom closet and just be like, never mind, everyone.
Yeah.
but yeah, so it means for me right now today, it means being very connected to nature in a way that grounds me no matter what is going on work-wise, family-wise, with all of my different roles. Because that role that I play of witch is very much close to my heart, like wrapped around my bones in a way that mother, partner, lover, teacher, even writer, all of those other things, it isn't the same. Witch is really in there.
Yeah.
That's part of my soul. That is part of who I am. So letting that kind of anchor me in the wild, in nature, when the rest of the world is kind of moving at hyperspeed like it is right now.
Yeah.
So letting witch kind of be like a coming home all the time, daily coming home.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
What if our listeners today aren't quite ready to identify as a witch, but certainly want to be open to exploring and inviting more magic in their lives? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. So there's being a witch, there's claiming the name witch, and then there's practicing witchcraft. And those two don't have to be one and the same, right? So to me, a witch is anyone who has claimed the name witch for herself or himself, or themselves, and also practices witchcraft. But you can practice witchcraft, which is really at its heart, it's an art. It's a practice of beauty and poetry.
Yes.
And so you can do that and have ritual and ceremony and a kinship with nature and a deep knowing of how nature's rhythms affect you in your life. You can have all of that without saying, I'm a witch now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never there shouldn't be this pressure to say that you're a witch if you're not feeling that yet, because I do think, there's different conditions for when someone's ready to say, I'm a witch.
Mm-hmm.
and they'll say it to themselves very quietly first, and then maybe they'll tell one other person, and then finally they'll tell everyone else. But yeah, that practice of integrating ritual and ceremony and magic into your life is completely possible. Practical magic is something that I describe in all of the magic chapters for the different elements in the book. And it's something that can be done, like I said, in the playroom or in the kitchen or seeing the hawk in the backyard. That can be a mini spell also. So it's kind of just a different way of looking at the world.
Yes.
In a way that sees beauty everywhere. So even in the ugly, even in the dark and the death and all of that, being able to see the beauty in the poetry, that is really a fundamental part of witchcraft.
Right into my bones, you're speaking to me. So nice. A significant part of the Holy Wild offers the reader a chance to write their own stories. their own
Yes.
verses.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you include that? Why do you think it's so important for their experience?
I think, it came out of, I have done a lot of women's circle work over the years. And whenever I have a circle, there's some kind of a writing and a sharing. And sometimes that's very funny and lighthearted, but often it's not. Often it's this, there's the writing of the story and then there's the sharing of the story. And I think that I have seen really more magic and transformation, or just as much anyway, come out of that. Just a woman
Yeah.
telling something of her experience that may have seemed very mundane to her at the time, but in the writing and the sharing and just having somebody look at her and say, wow, that's very powerful, or I hear you, that's my story also, that was absolutely everything. And I feel very fortunate to have been a part of so many circles where that happened. So in the Holy Wild, I really wanted to offer these prompts to kind of begin sharing stories that might seem like they're not a big deal. I think that every woman feels that way. My story's not important. My story's not a big deal until they write it down. And it's like, wow, this is an epic novel I am living.
Yeah. And then to be witnessed,
right.
to be witnessed is so friggin' powerful.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's most of that offering of the prompts to write the story. Those are in the verses chapters where the revisioning of the feminine archetype also happens. So there's this connection between, can you look at your story as Lilith's story or as Mary Magdalene's story, and then what realizations come from that. And I don't tell the reader what those realizations should be because I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, there's a power in being able to write and share your story that, there's something of like the global transformation in there. There's something really, really powerful in it that's part of the awakening.
I've been blown away by how much Mary Magdalene is popping up everywhere, and at least in my world.
Yeah.
And just, through this poem, through that book, through this person, through this conversation, just the energy, she is just here right now helping us with this reclamation without question. It's so potent. It's so potent.
Yeah, I mean, she is, talk about the shamed woman.
No doubt.
And really, being one of Jesus's most, revered disciples, and then, being turned into the prostitute or whatever. So,
yeah,
it's interesting for me. Mary Magdalene was really like right there for years. I was really into her. And then when I started writing this book, it was almost like she softened for me. Like her archetype kind of softened. And it was like, this was what I was supposed to do as far as working with her. And so I don't have her, right next to me like I did for years. But yeah, I know that she's a very strong archetype.
Yes. Where can our listeners and readers get a copy of The Holy Wild?
Oh, well, so it's in bookstores now. It's also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and IndieBound.
Oh, cool. So just about anywhere.
Came out last Saturday. Yep, pretty much anywhere you can get it.
Right on.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today for this episode of This Sacred Life. It's always such a pleasure and honor to speak with you and to share the great work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much, Shan. Yes, very happy to have been here with you. Always.
Danielle Dulsky is the author of The Holy Wild and Woman Most Wild. She's an artist, yoga teacher, energy worker, and founder of Living Mandala Yoga teacher training programs. Find out more about her online at danielledulsky.com. Thanks for listening to This Sacred Life and the Divine Feminine Spotlight. Visit transformationgoddess.com to claim our album of guided relaxations for women who do too much. And while you're there, check out our latest articles, book reviews, and resources for your goddess journey. Thanks for listening to This Sacred Life and the Divine Feminine Spotlight. Visit transformationgoddess.com to claim our album of guided relaxations for women who do too much. And while you're there, check out our latest articles, book reviews, and resources for your goddess journey.